All right, guys. It looks like we're going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Erika Delemarre. I am the Marine Protected Area Outreach and Education Project Coordinator here for California State Parks. And we're so excited to have you here. Today is MPA Monday. MPAs are our Marine Protected Areas. Every Monday here on our Ports Home Learning programs, we are focusing on California's marine protected areas. So these beautiful parts of our coastline, we've got 124 of them in California state waters, and we're celebrating the beauty of them every week. So the younger learners today have been visiting with our park interpretive rangers out in the field, but today you are actually here with us for a little bit of career exploration, so career pathways in marine conservation. So before I get started and go deeper, I do want to just thank everyone for continuing to stay safe at home. I know that you all are working very hard to learn and continue your education while you are in the comfort of your own home. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And we just do remind you to stay safe and healthy by continuing to keep physical distance and do hand washing and just following the different rules that have been laid out for us. So thank you guys for that. Now, you may have noticed already that we do not have a Q&A feature for this webinar. However, we do have the chat available, and the chat is going to go to the panelists that you see on screen here. So I see that we've got a couple of people who are already starting to ask some questions. So if you have some questions for myself or any of the panelists that will be speaking today, feel free to share them in the chat box. Now, the reason why we're having this today is when we run programs at our different organizations, we often get questions from high schoolers. How do I get your job? How do I get a career like yours? And that's why we're here today. The thing is it's not often a very straight shot. It's often a long and windy road with lots of exploring, taking risks, and also saying yes to opportunities that can be a little challenging. And the thing is it's all about choosing your own path and creating an amazing career for yourself. And also hopefully having a positive impact on the marine environment and our coastlines while you're at it. Now, today I've got three very special people with me. They are my colleagues, but I'm also really very happy to call them my friends. I have worked with these individuals in different capacities to help protect our coastlines here in California over the years. And I'm so excited to introduce them to you guys. So I'm gonna start off by introducing Emily. Emily, if you wanna go ahead and unmute yourself and just tell us who you are, just really quick, where you're from, and then we'll move on to the other introductions.
Absolutely, thanks Erica. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name is Emily Parker. I'm the coastal and marine scientist at Halong Bay. We're located in Santa Monica, the west side of Los Angeles. I'm originally from Connecticut, haven't lived there in a very long time, so I currently live here on the west side of LA in Venice Beach. And I can't wait to talk to you about my long and windy career path.
Awesome, thank you, Emily. Cory, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Cory Pukini. I'm the California Conservation Manager at WILDCOAST. I'm originally from Redding, Northern California. I live in San Diego now, quarantined currently in Palm Springs. But yeah, I'm excited to tell you about my windy career path as well.
Thank you, Cory. All right, and then Nicole, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Palma. I am the program manager for the MPA Collaborative Network. MPA stands for Marine Protected Area. I normally work remotely from home and I live in Monterey, but I am originally from Florida. And in a normal basis, I would also travel along the coast of California to meet with our different groups that we work with that I will tell you more about soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. And for those of you who missed it at the beginning, my name is Erika Delemarre. I am the Marine Protected Area Outreach and Education Project Coordinator for California State Parks. I lead a team of educators, our interpretive specialists who work up and down our California coastline, running the programs that you've seen here on the Ports Home Learning programs for MPA Monday, but also welcoming visitors into the parks when the parks are open during our more normal times. So I work statewide, but I am based here in Monterey, California. Nicole actually lives in my neighborhood as well. But we, again, all do statewide work. And I think when we talk about working for the ocean too, when we're working to protect our coast and ocean, that doesn't only impact the coastlines and the ocean here in California, but the ocean connects us to other parts of the world as well. And so the work that we do here has global impacts, which is really exciting. Now, as I mentioned, we are going to be focusing on how our winding roads of our careers have gotten us to where we are now. And so each of the panelists is going to speak a little bit about the work that they're doing and share their winding road with you guys. So again, remember, you can use the chat feature to ask questions. And at the end of each of our panelists' sharing session, we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So if you have any questions that come up, I'll be checking out the chat feature. All right, so we're gonna start off with Emily, and I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself and we can hear Emily's story.
All right, awesome. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, beautiful. All right, cool. So again, my name is Emily Parker, and I am the coastal and marine scientist at Hilda Bay. But as I think all of us have already sort of mentioned, my road to my current job was very long and winding. So I'm going to start at the very beginning and sort of explain how I got to where I am. And then I'm going to dive into the work that I'm doing right now, specifically to protect our coasts and oceans. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from Connecticut, a very, very small town in Connecticut that no one has ever heard of. I grew up very rurally and very much in the outdoors. And I have always been a lover of the ocean. I've been an ocean kid ever since I could walk. I have salt water in my veins, I like to think. So I think before I even started thinking about a career path, I think I always knew that the oceans would be a part of that. What really kicked me off actually on this, this path was a high school marine biology class. So for a lot of those that are tuning in today, it was right around when I was your age that I really started to think about what a career in marine sciences would look like. My high school marine biology teacher definitely changed my world as far as thinking about the oceans and how ocean careers could work. So from there, I ended up moving to North Carolina. I went to Elon University to get my bachelor's degree. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental sciences. And I bounced around a lot when I first started in college. So for those of you that are getting ready to go to college and have no idea what your major is going to be, that's okay. Don't worry about it too much. I started out as an education major, then a psych major, and then finally landed on environmental sciences. And while I was in school, I did a lot of water quality work. And then I also did a lot of work with sustainable and environmental food. So definitely wasn't focused on marine sciences at that time. I chose a university that not only didn't have a marine bio major, but didn't even have a marine bio class. So I had to sort of think on my feet as far as taking classes and doing things that I still loved, even though I was a bit far from the ocean at the time. So after I graduated, which was, let's see, 6 or 7 years ago now, I ended up in Washington, D.C. And while I was living in Washington, D.C., I got my first job outside of college working for the Ocean Conservancy. So this was my first taste of the ocean and marine conservation nonprofit world. And I definitely got hooked because that's still where I am today. So the Ocean Conservancy is an international nonprofit. They're pretty large, and they work on everything from marine debris to climate change and ocean acidification, to fisheries management and everything in between. So that's where I had a fellowship, and I worked on marine debris specifically, so trash in the oceans. And that's still to this day one of my biggest passions. I know that Erika and I have that in common, and we've worked together on some marine debris projects. So my passion for preventing trash from ending up in our oceans started really early. And there I actually worked on building a curriculum. So specifically working on lesson plans for students that would get them engaged, learn about marine debris, how it ends up where it is, and how we can prevent it from getting there. So after a few sort of other odds and ends as far as jobs go in Washington, D.C., all around marine and environmental education for the most part, I decided to uproot my entire life. I had a little bit of it, what we lovingly refer to as a quarter life crisis. And I moved halfway across the world. And I ended up living in Costa Rica for half a year. And while I was living there, I was working on marine conservation projects and voluntourism projects, what we call voluntourism. So folks who travel to other parts of the world to volunteer their time and help work on conservation projects. Another thing that Erika and I have in common, actually. So while there, I worked on everything from trash cleanups and marine debris still to mangrove restoration and mangrove projects where we were planting mangrove trees and working in greenhouses and that sort of thing. I worked mostly with high school students. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, I welcome you reaching out to me and asking questions about what programs like that look like, because I can provide lots of information. And then after that, I ended up here in California. I decided it was time to go back to school. I wanted to get a master's degree. So I ended up in San Diego, which is actually how I met both Erika and Cory, was during my grad school experience at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, which is part of UC San Diego. And there I got my master's in marine biodiversity and conservation. And while I was there, I have always had an affinity for sea turtles, always been a big sea turtle fan. And so I decided to focus my graduate research on sea turtle conservation. I worked in El Salvador for my research, and I was working with community partners, those who had started community-based conservation projects. And when I say community-based conservation, I'm talking about a program or a project that was started by the folks that live right there in the community. So it's a bottom-up approach to conservation versus something that was started, for example, by the government or a more top-down approach. So I was working with folks that collect sea turtle eggs. They used to collect sea turtle eggs for consumption. Now they're collected for conservation. So I was studying that conservation program and how successful collecting sea turtle eggs and moving them to hatcheries to keep them safe was to protect the species. So again, as far as sea turtles go, more than happy to answer all the questions that you might have about that. Definitely a passion of mine. So for this last moment here, I'm going to share my slide or my screen so I can show just like a few pictures of what my long and winding road has looked like. So I'm going to do that. Let's see. I believe I do it like this. All right, did that work? Does everyone see a slide that says, "Who am I?"
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. So on the left-hand side, you can see some photos of me doing some of the work that I did while in graduate school, some diving that I did while at school, and then also the sea turtle conservation work that I did in El Salvador. But a lot of these slides are of my current job. So I'm going to finish up talking about this job. So after graduating, I ended up in Los Angeles. Again, after a few odd jobs here and there that Erika actually knows all about as well. And I ended up working at Hilda Bay as their coastal marine scientist. So my job at Hilda Bay, though scientist is in my title, I think that title might be just a little misleading, as I am not in a lab conducting hands-on research every day, wearing a white coat, that sort of thing. My job looks much more like someone who is an advocate. Oh, looks like my screen just went away there. Let's see if I can fix that. There we go. So I act as an advocate for our oceans. So using science-based knowledge to inform laws that help to protect our oceans and coasts. So a lot of the photos that you see in this slide here are of me doing just that, doing advocacy work, connecting with the community, connecting with the public, and using the background that I have in science to inform the policymakers like senators and assembly members, and working to pass the best legislation and the best laws that protect our oceans and coasts. So I work on everything from marine debris and plastics, still definitely probably my biggest passion in my job, to marine protected areas. So I help lead an MPA Watch program here in Los Angeles. I work with everyone else in this call with the MPA Collaborative Network that you're going to hear a lot more about from Nicole, and just working to keep Los Angeles's marine protected areas healthy and well managed. And then the last thing I work on is sustainable fisheries management. So working with the Fish and Game Commission and other folks here in California that pass laws and regulations to help manage our fisheries sustainably. My job looks very, very different depending on the day. So I like to show this as an example. The photo on the left, I'm helping to collect some kelp and some krill for some small shrimp for our aquarium. And the photo on the right, I am lobbying at our state capitol. These photos were taken 24 hours apart from each other. So my job looks very different depending on the day. And that's one of the things I love about it. So I believe I've reached my time, so I want to leave a little bit of time for questions if anyone has them. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then take a look at the chat to see what questions we might have.
All right, I've been keeping a good eye on the chat here, Emily. And
all right.
It's looking like one of the first questions that came up was from Reagan. And Reagan was asking if you could clarify, are sea turtles actually affected by plastic straws?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes, although I will say that I think there are other items of debris that more heavily affect sea turtles. Straw is definitely one of them, but all single-use plastics are really detrimental. For sea turtles in particular, it's plastic bags. So while not all species of sea turtles eat jellyfish, a lot of them do, and for some it's their absolute favorite food. And if anyone has seen a plastic bag in the water, it looks quite a lot like jellyfish. So a lot of animals, sea turtles included, but not only sea turtles, I know for whales, this is also a big issue, is that those bags get ingested and then the animal feels full even though it isn't and ends up dying as a result of that. So yes, plastic straws do affect sea turtles, but I would say there's other debris that affects sea turtles even more.
All right, that was a really great question and an important one, because I know that when we're talking about marine conservation, plastic pollution is one of the biggest threats to our ocean at this time. So another question just came in from Piper, and Piper asks, do we protest? So do we take political action?
That is a great question. And at Heal the Bay, yes. Yes, we do. I would say it's not the biggest thing that we do as far as the kind of political action that we take. Far more often it involves things like direct lobbying, writing letters, engaging directly with decision makers. But every once in a while, when we really, really need an issue to get a lot of attention, yes, we do participate in protests. Most recently, we participated in Fire Drill Fridays, which is a protest sort of style that was developed by Jane Fonda and has been happening all over the country throughout the past, I would say 6 months or so. And so we participated in a Fire Drill Friday here in Wilmington to protest neighborhood drilling. So Wilmington is a neighborhood here in Los Angeles that has the highest rates of neighborhood oil drilling anywhere in the country. And a lot of folks that live there have oil drills in their backyard and are experiencing enormous, disproportionately high levels of pollution. So we did participate in a protest to try to get the attention of the decision makers in that area to pass a law that would put a 2,500-foot buffer zone between homes, schools, and places of worship and drilling sites. So yes, sometimes we do participate in
Very cool. Yeah, it is important to take action if you're able. The last question for you, Emily, is what is your favorite part about your job? And that comes from Aiden. So just
Aiden,
to summarize.
That is a great question. I think my favorite part about my job, other than the fact that I get to get in the ocean sometimes, which is awesome, is the tangible changes that the work my organization. So for example, Heal the Bay worked really, really hard on the plastic bag ban, both in Los Angeles and in the state of California. And, you know, after that, we started working on lots of other pieces of legislation that have to do with plastics. But that one in particular, we already see the effect of that law. We host beach cleanups all the time. It's sort of the cornerstone thing that Heal the Bay does. And we've seen a drastic decline in the amount of plastic bags that we find on our beaches since we passed that ban. So the work that we do has very tangible effects that you can actually see. And I think that's my favorite part of the job, is knowing that the work that I put in every day and the work that all of my colleagues and my not just at Heal the Bay, but across the coast, the work that we do does make a difference.
Awesome. Well, Emily, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. There are more questions coming in, but we are going to have to move on to our next one. Now, Emily, I know that you might have to dip out early. So if there are more questions for you later on, I'll make sure to send you an email. And just for everyone who is watching, we are going to share our contact information at the end. So if you have specific questions for the panelists, you can certainly contact us at the end of the broadcast. So Emily, thank you so much for taking your time. And now we're gonna pass it off to Cory. So Cory, if you'd like to share your story with us, it's your turn.
All right, hi guys. I just posted a link to a really helpful website that's gonna add a little bit of context to what I'm talking about. Once again, my name is Cory Pukini. I'm the California Conservation Manager at WILDCOAST. My story is really similar to Emily's, actually. A lot of bouncing around and kind of ad hoc different skill sets to kind of create the marine conservationist that I am today. So growing up, as I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from Northern California, not really close to the ocean, but I did have a two-parent situation, dad in Southern California, mom in Northern California, so I kind of bounced back and forth and was able to kind of conquer both environments. But growing up, for me, fishing in the outdoors and baseball was like everything. So in high school, wasn't really a good student, I'll be totally honest. I wasn't a great student, but I did take a medical careers magnet series of courses that were kind of like pre-med courses, and led me to like the discovery of biology as a science that I really enjoyed learning about. I went to Shasta College and bounced around, changed my major like 7 different times. Shasta College is a junior college, JC, up in Northern California. With the intent to transfer, I moved to Long Beach and attended Long Beach City College, kind of finished out all of my undergraduate prerequisite courses for a biology major. And then ended up actually moving back north to Chico to attend Chico State, where I got a degree in environmental science, just like Emily did, with an option in applied ecology. And most of my research for my undergrad research was all based in fisheries and fisheries management. So as I mentioned, fishing was always kind of a lifelong passion of mine. And it's something that I discovered I could really pour a lot of energy and myself into and make a career out of. While at Chico, I decided to start looking for internships. And so I posted a link to the chat for the Texas A&M Department of Wildlife and Fisheries Sciences job board, which I've found like 3 or 4 jobs through my journey.
Hey, Cory, I just wanted to just let you know that that hasn't gone to all attendees. So I will get that link at the end. Yeah, sorry about
that. And while I was in Chico, I got this internship at the Utah Department of Natural Resources as a fisheries intern. I moved out to eastern Utah, this little city called Vernal, Utah. I lived for a summer, 3 months in a tiny trailer with another intern who fortunately was a buddy of mine, and we're still close friends. And learned a lot that summer. Learned a lot about myself because I was living out on my own in a trailer in the middle of the desert in Utah, but also a lot about fisheries science. Got to do things like helicopter into backcountry areas, roadless areas, and get dropped off with one of those Ghostbuster looking electrofishing backpacks to sample for invasive species in high mountain streams. Learned how to spawn fish by hand, learned how to work in a fish hatchery. So a lot of really cool skills that kind of set the base of the platform for me to build my career on. And then after I graduated from Chico State, I was actually already committed to go to Oregon State for grad school, and I was approached by a grad professor who asked me if I wanted to do a marine science track for my biology degree, which is what I ended up doing. So I studied marine protected areas in the Channel Islands National Park, so the northern Channel Islands, especially Anacapa and Santa Cruz Island. So diving and looking at how different species interact with their ecosystem at a super high resolution, fine scale, really a lot of like the minutia of how these different species interact with their environment. And fell in love with it, like absolutely fell in love with it. Marine science kind of opened up a whole new realm of possibilities for me. So I started looking at careers kind of more pointed in that direction. After grad school, I jumped around to a few different places. And this sounds like something that both Erika and Nicole and Emily all had to do. You got to kind of just get your feet underneath you and head down, legs moving, and just keep working at these different positions until something opens itself up to you. I went from teaching at a couple of different levels at Chico State as a natural science educator to working at a museum called Turtle Bay Exploration Park up in Northern California as like a wildlife instructor. I was a cultural arts and history instructor. I was a research assistant. And then I finally came across this one job that really sparked my interest, and it was an invasive species biologist on the north side of the island of Kauai, so the northernmost island in Hawaii. And moved to Hawaii and decided to spend a year out there setting up this project where we would remove invasive species from high mountain places. The helicopter on Monday would drop me off in the jungle, and I would live there until about Thursday night. Helicopter would come back out and extract me, and I would hunt, trap, and eradicate invasive species that would predate on the endemic seabirds that live in Kauai. After doing that for about a year, my just physically started to give out because you're hiking around in the jungles for a year. Missed society, so rejoined by finding a new job at WILDCOAST, actually, where I'm currently at, and I've been at for the last almost at least 4 years this summer. And my position at WILDCOAST kind of harkens back to my grad research, and it's very specific to MPAs. So MPA management in California, as anybody on the panel could tell you, is a difficult task. It's a Herculean task because there's 124 different MPAs stretched out across the state. And I've worked with all the individuals on the panel in some capacity to enhance the management of MPAs. In particular, some of the highlights of my career at WILDCOAST so far have been the enforcement and compliance efforts. So doing things like developing new technologies and training law enforcement on how to use new technologies to enhance the compliance in marine protected areas. I also work in some policy track type things like Emily had mentioned. So I do travel to Sacramento quite a bit. And I also am a part of the MPA Collaborative Network that Nicole is a part of. So I wear a lot of different hats, and much like Emily showed that picture of that before and after, or within that 24-hour period, I do a lot of that as well. But WILDCOAST also works in Mexico. So some of my work takes me international from time to time, and looking forward to getting back to that at some point here, because I love to travel, and this career has really provided me with a lot of travel opportunities. My general day-to-day is anything from taking out a research boat that we have in a dock in San Diego, going out and looking for poachers, writing reports, grants, coming up with social media content, participating in webinar series like this, and guest speaking at various other places. A lot of what I do is also training people and building conservation capacity around marine protected areas in particular. And that kind of wraps it all up. It's a little of this, a little of that, and there's really these four main pillars of MPA management in the state of California. And I think Erika is probably going to talk about a little bit, or maybe one of the other panelists. But
you can go ahead and share them right now if you'd like, Cory.
Okay. So enforcement, compliance, research and monitoring, policy and permitting, and what's the fourth one I'm missing here, Erica?
Maybe outreach and education.
Outreach and education, which I kind of stepped away from in the past few months. So it makes sense why I don't remember.
Awesome.
But,
Cory,
yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story. And yeah, you're just really reinforcing that idea that like it is a long and winding road and there's so much exploration. You know, it's never a straight shot into a career. We're certainly not of our parents' generation. You know, we don't graduate from college and go and have a career at one company or organization for our whole lives, but, you know, doing different projects and different contracts really increases, obviously, our knowledge and our experience, but also it makes for a wonderful life, right? When you get to live in different places and work with different teams. One of the questions that came in while you were speaking was, a comment, you've overcome a lot of different challenges. What was the most difficult part of your journey? So I mean, I have my own answers to that, but I'd love to, like, was there a challenge for you, Cory, that you would recognize as being the most difficult point along your path?
Yeah, a lot of no's. So when you apply to jobs, you're going to get a lot of no's, especially in this field. It's highly impacted. There's a lot of people that want these jobs, and you're going to be competing with hundreds of people. So you really have to find a way to distinguish yourself. And the best way to do that is just a head down, legs moving kind of approach. Don't take it personal. Try and make yourself as well-rounded as possible. So whether it be internships or volunteering or, you know, and Erica, you probably speak a lot to this too, but there's a lot of like ad hoc pieces to putting together a career in marine conservation. And like you said, it's not just graduate and get a job. You really have to have these like extracurriculars and the drive to want to do it. And I think that the people that are most passionate about it are the people that, you know, make it furthest.
Absolutely. Now, the other question that did just come in was, what is your favorite part of your current job with WILDCOAST as the California Conservation Manager?
Definitely the creativity of it. So working for a small, nimble nonprofit, I get to bounce around a lot and I play a lot of different roles. One week I'll be working on blue carbon ecosystems in San Diego, and the next week I'll be working with some of my colleagues in Mexico talking about marine conservation plans for different parts of the world. So for me, it's definitely the ability to be creative and move quickly, and no 2 days aside from the last 30 or so that I've been in quarantine have been exactly the same.
Yeah, we're certainly all facing that, where our jobs that do require us to travel quite a bit around the state working on different projects have, you know, things have slowed down as we're here sheltering in place, but it is important to do that during this time. Yeah. Well, awesome, Cory. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. If I know that Emily had to leave, do you mind sticking around to the end just in case we get any more questions for you?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Cory. All right. Well, we are going to pass it off now to Nicole Palma. So, Nicole, if you'd like to take it away.
All right.
Oh,
hello, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me okay?
I'm hearing some echo. It sounds like we're coming through your computer as well as your phone right now.
How about now? Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Nicole Palma. I am the program manager with the MPA Collaborative Network. I'm going to start off with what I'm doing now and then kind of talk a little bit about how I got there. So everyone's kind of mentioned this MPA Collaborative Network a couple times because I actually have the pleasure of working with all of the panelists on a somewhat regular basis through my job. So the MPA Collaborative Network is an umbrella organization that supports and coordinates the activities of 14 county-based volunteer stakeholder groups along the coast of California. We call these groups collaboratives. Collaboratives bring together diverse marine protected area stakeholders to locally engage in MPA stewardship and management. So as I mentioned, I have worked with all the panelists before because they are members of their local collaboratives and are actually all co-chairs, which means they help lead their local group. State parks especially is very involved in the collaborative statewide. We have many rangers and interpreters that are members of the collaboratives and contribute greatly to their projects. Our collaboratives do a lot of education and outreach projects. They make brochures, videos, activities, curriculums, things like that. They also contribute to research and monitoring projects and enforcement and compliance. So 3 of those 4 pillars of MPA management that Cory talked about. Because we are a small organization of only 3 staff members that support 14 of these statewide groups that has over 600 individual members, I do a lot of different things on a day-to-day basis, which is kind of a theme that we're hearing today, especially in the small nonprofit world. Some general tasks that I do: I manage our website and social media. I oversee our remotely operated vehicle or underwater robot program. I provide support to the collaboratives on their projects and their grant writing, and I interface between these local experts and the collaboratives and the state managing agencies in Sacramento. So the Collaborative Network kind of helps share communications between the locals and the state agencies, and it's kind of the Oreo filling between the 2 Oreo cookies. So how did I get here? Also kind of a long and winding path. I'll just highlight a few key things that I think had formative experiences for me and kind of shaped my pathway to my career. In general, my education is science-based, so more on the research side of things. But then in my actual career and in my jobs, I've been more on the education and outreach side of things. And sometimes that just happens. You kind of fall into a path and then you like it and you stick with it. So in high school, I was in a special pre-veterinary program that allowed me to take specialized higher level science courses and intern with a veterinarian during my senior year. And I also co-founded my school's environmental club. This was back when the earth and the environment wasn't the top of every news story. It was just kind of getting started. And so I took an AP environmental science class that really opened my eyes to a lot of the problems our earth was facing. And that's kind of what prompted myself and a few friends to start the environmental club. In college, I went to the University of Miami in Miami, Florida. And I started out as a psychology major because I wanted to work with dolphins. I always wanted to be a marine biologist, but I wanted to play with dolphins or just animals in general. And then as I learned more and more about the world and careers, that focus kind of broadened. So I ended up changing to be a double major in biology and environmental science and policy with a psychology minor. And I got a Bachelor of Arts degree as opposed to a Bachelor of Science degree. And at different schools, that kind of means different things. At my school, that meant I didn't have to take as many higher level math classes. I've always been good at science, not so much in math. So I did Bachelor of Arts, so that way I could kind of take more science classes that interested me as opposed to math classes. While in college, I worked in a tropical conservation biology research lab to just gain more experience and to see what it was like. Although I did enjoy the science and what I was learning, I learned that I didn't really want to be stuck in a lab all day looking at a microscope. It is fun, but not every day, all day, at least not for me. I wanted to be in the field more. So after graduation, I really had no idea what I was going to do when I graduated college, and I ended up getting an unpaid internship that did turn into a part-time job at a local nonprofit that focused on environmental education. And I think the moral of that story is that everyone wants the paid internship. You know, you want to be paid and have the best job, but sometimes if you're in a position, go for those unpaid internships. You never know what might happen and what you might learn. And I really learned a lot at that job, and I was given a lot of responsibilities because it was another small nonprofit. So I got to do many different things, and I got to, I'd say, advance my professional skills quickly. While working at that part-time job, I also started a Master of Professional Science degree program, also at the University of Miami. this is really where I kind of started to narrow in my focus on marine science and conservation. I loved my program. It was so great, made great friends, learned a lot, had great professors, really opened my eyes to all of the different pathways and careers that are involved in marine science and conservation, especially as it relates to technology, as well as citizen or community science, which is when the public gets involved in scientific research projects. Also in this master's program, I took a scientific diving course that trained me to be a scientific diver. So I got to learn how to scuba dive and actually collect scientific data underwater. So this master's program that I did, it was a master's of professional science, which is a little different than a regular master's program. So in this accelerated program, it is project and internship based as opposed to research based. So I interned with the National Park Service's South Florida Caribbean Inventory and Monitoring Network. It's a mouthful. But this is kind of a branch of the Park Service that is focused purely on doing inventory and monitoring of natural resources in regional parks. So we worked primarily in South Florida in the dry tortugas, and I would survey reef fish and coral reefs on scuba and take data with that. And my project was focused on creating a pilot protocol, you know, kind of the first step looking at what was possible with using 3D modeling of coral reefs for those inventory and monitoring projects. And I did that using a technique called 3D photogrammetry, which is where you take a bunch of photos of something and then a computer program stitches them together to create a 3D model. So I just kind of wanted to show what those look like because they're cool. So I'm going to share my screen, or I think they're cool. I did make them, so. Let's see. Here we go. Can everyone see that screen? Yes?
That looks good. We can see it, Nicole.
Okay. So this is just one of the 3D models that I made. This is just a small plot of a coral reef. I believe this is in Biscayne Bay in South Florida. You can actually see where the coral has died off a bit because of disease and bleaching. All this white area here where you see color is actually living coral reef. And this is a website called Sketchfab where you can upload 3D models and kind of see them in this 3D space, which is very cool. My final project actually focused on this transect. So we would swim over this plot of coral reef, and it's kind of a blue-green color because it was a little deeper in about 60 feet of water, and light doesn't penetrate as well the deeper you get in the water, so you start to lose some colors. So that's why they all look kind of blue and green. And we would swim over this kind of in a lawnmower pattern, up and over and down, and try to get overlapping photos of this whole area. And then the computer program stitches that together to form this 3D plot of a reef. And we use this to mark all the places where we saw disease. And we did this once and then a couple months later during a big disease outbreak. And we were able to quantify the 3D surface area of how much the disease had increased over those couple of months. So those are the 3D models. And that is also kind of where I started becoming more of a tech person. I am not a very technologically savvy person who has somehow become a technologically savvy person. And that's kind of where that started with those 3D models. After I graduated from that program, I ended up falling into the education outreach realm again while working in the education department at a science museum and aquarium. And there I created and delivered educational programs on all sorts of scientific topics, not just marine science. And although I did enjoy many aspects of that job, I wanted to move back into marine conservation and into a job that challenged me a bit more and allowed me to be out in the field more. And that's how I ended up moving from Florida to California and working with the MPA Collaborative Network, which has been a great decision. And I've been here for about a year now. And that is my story.
Very awesome. Thank you so much. Nicole, we had a couple of comments in the chat box. People were very impressed by those 3D models. That's really cool.
I'm impressed that I did it, to be honest.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to your stories, and this is great. This has been an awesome opportunity for me to get to know you guys better. But it's really kind of highlighting how there are different foundations and just getting a college education to begin with, whether you're studying environmental science or something else. And then throughout your career, there's a lot of overlap of where you can apply that knowledge. And I think that you've really demonstrated that with how you've kind of gone through your different experiences and different parts of the coastline now coming over here to the West Coast. So let's see, I did have a question for you that came from Maximus, who is watching from Argentina. And one of the questions that he asked was, which of your jobs has been the most fun? And I know that there's a chance that your boss might be watching now.
Oh, she is. Hi, Kala. So which has been the most fun? No offense to my current job. This has been the best job that I've had, but it hasn't necessarily been the most fun because I do spend a lot of time on the computer at home. In this current job, I would say that the most fun job has been interning with the Park Service, just because I got to go out on a boat, scuba dive, see fish, dolphins, amazing animals, and just be in nature a lot more often. But this job also has its perks. Like I said, I get to do that remotely operated vehicle program. So I get to play with little underwater robots and teach other people how to use them. And I get to travel up and down the coast a lot, which I enjoy.
Yeah, the travel is always really fun. One of the questions too, that he had asked in association with that, and quite a few people have been asking, is how much do we get paid? And it's often the more fun the job is, you're getting paid in those dives, you're getting paid in sunsets, you're getting paid in getting to live in amazing locations. The money that's going into your bank account isn't quite as much. And then when you start to kind of find a balance where you get to work a fun job, but you also have some time where you're doing a lot of work in an office or, at a desk at home or at a desk in a kelp forest, finding that balance between having a career that pays well, but also that you can enjoy and have fun. And I think that we're all kind of in that position right now. That was really fantastic. Let me just scan really quick to see. One person asked, how did you know how or what you wanted to do? And I know that's a complex one. And I think that
for me.
if you want to go ahead and answer that, Nicole, it's a challenging one.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of ran out of time, but I would say that I have never really known what I wanted to do. Like I said, I started as a child and I 100% wanted to work with dolphins. But as you learn more and you grow and your experiences change, that broadened, at least for me. And my problem has always been narrowing my focus to a job that interests me, because I am so interested in everything. I want to play in the kelp forest. I want to work with marine protected areas. I want to play with the dolphins and do plastic research and, a little bit of everything. So my strategy has been to say yes to opportunities that present themselves, even if they're not necessarily on exactly what I want to do, because you never know what you might learn or if you might like it.
Yeah, that is also one of my mantras too, is when opportunities present themselves, say yes. Explore. It might be a little scary, it might seem a little challenging, but it's always opportunity to grow and learn and have an amazing life experience. So very awesome, Nicole. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes. And I'm just gonna go ahead and share a little bit of my story now. I've been helping moderate, but I, just like the other panelists, have had quite a long and winding road. I started my life in New York on the East Coast, but I grew up for the most part in the deserts of Arizona. So a little bit further from the ocean. My families and we would take trips out to California or back to New York on the summer. But for the most part, I didn't get to spend a lot of time by the ocean. However, I had a dad who was what we call a waterman. He was a scuba diver and a sailor, and he made sure that I had all the books and documentary, like the videos to watch and learn and explore the ocean, even though I was growing up in the desert. So I went to school. I did my college, my bachelor's degree at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I did a bachelor's of science in communications. So my degree was really focused on science, but I was also very focused on doing public relations and communications. So helping people understand difficult concepts like science. So after college though, and this is where I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. You know, I just, hold on just a minute here. So after college, I went ahead and I learned how to scuba dive. So this is a picture of me here. You guys may have seen it on the program flyer. Diving was immediately an obsession of mine. Once you get underwater, there is no way that you can't be a voice for all of the beautiful animals, all the amazing creatures that live in our world's ocean. So that would probably be my first tip for all the people who are in there, you know, the students out there who are interested in speaking for our ocean, get underwater. So have a look under the sea, and that's where it can all start. Now, after I graduated from college, I worked for a couple of years, and then I ended up going to Vietnam. I ended up taking some time off and away from work, and I did a lot of volunteer work. So I spent about 3 months in Vietnam volunteering, working on a project called Action for Halong Bay. You can actually see me in this photo. I am in a green shirt, kind of to the right of center, with over 100 volunteers in Halong Bay, Vietnam. And we had done a big cleanup on a remote beach. All of that trash you see stacked in front of us came from a remote island where no one lives. It's all stuff that had washed up on shore. I also lived in Cambodia for about 7 months, and Cambodia, again, I saw just so much plastic waste, not only along our shorelines, but again, I was scuba diving. So I was working on a research project there for an organization called Marine Conservation Cambodia. We were monitoring marine protected areas. That was my first opportunity to work in and on marine protected areas. And one of the big things that stood out for me, again, was plastic pollution in the ocean there. That was one of the points that I had in my career, was actually underwater in Cambodia, where I had just this one moment where I was training a new volunteer how to identify a species of seahorse underwater. And the person was a few years younger than me. They had just learned how to dive, and it was the first time they'd seen a seahorse underwater, and their eyes just lit up in their dive mask. And that moment of getting to share something so magical with someone was when I knew that I was like, you know what, I'm doing the right thing. This is the career for me. So I continued on. This is diving in Indonesia. You can see in my hand, I have 2 pieces of plastic, but then just over my shoulder, there's kind of something in the distance that looks like a little spaceship, and that's actually a green turtle. That's a sea turtle swimming by. As Emily had mentioned earlier on in our discussion, turtles are really impacted by plastic. So this was something that really drove me, and I saw it throughout my travels, and it just, it got to the point where I couldn't ignore it. This again is a beach in Indonesia where the high tide line is just covered in plastic bottles and shampoo bottles and flip-flops, all sorts of different containers. And having seen that during my travels, I was really inspired. So I ended up coming back to the United States after about 5 years of living abroad. I've primarily been doing volunteer work and working on different projects for a little bit of amount of pay, but lots and lots of experience. And I came back to University of California, San Diego, where I studied and did a master's degree at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And that's actually where I also met Emily from before, and Cory was during my time there. And at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, I focused on marine plastic pollution outreach and education, but also on our marine protected areas. And that long and winding road has led me to where I'm at now at California State Parks. So I have the opportunity to do a lot of outreach and education in the public. So talking with members of the public and students like you guys about the importance of our marine protected areas, and just in general, helping you guys understand your connection between the ocean and you. So I want to just take a really quick moment to do a quick exercise. I'd like everyone to take a big, deep breath with me. So let's do one in and one out. And another one. Let's take a second one. All right, so 2 breaths. Did you know that 50% of the oxygen in our atmosphere was generated by the ocean? So that second breath we took, every other breath, we can say, thank you, ocean, for that oxygen. And that's one of the many reasons why we have to work together to protect our sea. So that's what I do today. It's been a long and winding road, but the big lessons that I learned along the way is, number one, to volunteer. Take the time to volunteer, get involved in high school, get involved at college, do just different activities that allow you to gain experience. The pay might not be there immediately, but you can definitely get some great experience that you can apply in other situations. And that's what often leads to good paying jobs. And my other big takeaway is, of course, to be willing to break the mold and do something different. Step outside of your comfort zone. You know, maybe all of your friends go straight into college right after high school, and you decide, you know what, I'm gonna take a break and I'm going to explore by doing some volunteering in my community. Or maybe I'm gonna go travel overseas and explore what life is like in another part of the world. There's so many different ways that you can explore your world and learn more about yourself. If you take the time to realize that this is your life, you get to choose it. So that's probably the biggest lesson that I took away from it, is just being confident and making decisions to make my story my own. So oops, hold on, I am gonna bring that back up because I had one more slide to share with you guys as we wrap up here. Just a second. So this last one is all of our names and contact information and organizations we're with. I know that we had quite a few different questions come up about different things that we weren't able to answer during this chat. I did see something come in saying, can I speak to starting a career in state parks, but in general with state and national parks? How do you get your foot in the door? There are a lot of entry-level positions at both at state parks and in national parks. Cory had he'd saved or shared the website earlier on about USA Jobs. There's also California Jobs. And you can go to those government websites to see the entry-level positions that are available. My number one recommendation to all the students who are tuning in right now is to make sure that you very thoroughly consider going to college. Getting a bachelor's degree is a very good baseline to start your career, because it's not only about the thing that you're studying, but it's also about the different connections you're making and learning how to do things like create PowerPoint presentations, or, you know, collect data and work in Microsoft Excel. There's so many different applications for that, working on different teams to put presentations and projects together. So things that you do during your bachelor's degree can really apply to jobs, not only with California State Parks or National Park Service, but even nonprofit organizations like WILDCOAST and Heal the Bay and MPA Collaborative Network. So we do have just a couple minutes left here for any questions. I'm monitoring the box. For Cory and Nicole, I know you've been on the line having a look at the box. Can you let me know if there's anything specific that came up? All right.
This is Nicole.
Okay.
I've noticed a couple, what is the favorite part of your job question, and I don't believe I answered that one. So my favorite part of my current job is working with many different people. So as I mentioned, we work with diverse stakeholders, everyone from fishermen to nonprofit organizations to academics to ocean businesses. And it's really fun getting to know all these different members and hearing their perspectives and trying to come together on middle ground that benefits the most people for MPA management.
Yeah, it is really great. And I think that's kind of part of, you know, that's why you and I know each other. That's why we know Cory, is because we've had the opportunity to really collaborate and work as a team between California State Parks and different organizations across the state to make these great outcomes happen. So collaborating and working with different people has been a lot of fun. So let's see what else. I did see a question, out of all the places I've cleaned up trash, what was the place that had the most work? Southeast Asia in particular, my experience in Vietnam and Cambodia and Indonesia, there was a lot of work to be done there. A lot of that isn't necessarily at fault of the people who live there. Often these places, these small island nations especially, don't have the infrastructure to handle the amount of waste that's being generated. So here in the Western world, we can take that single-use plastic and we can throw it away into the trash and it disappears out of mind, out of sight, and it goes away into a landfill. A lot of places around the world might not have that kind of infrastructure. And so that's when that stuff ends up getting into waterways like rivers and into the coastline and into the ocean. So a reminder to all of you guys as we wrap up here today, our ocean is one big body of water that connects all of us together. Every single living thing on planet Earth relies on a healthy ocean. So if we all do work to protect it, we're also doing work to take care of ourselves and the environment here on land that we love as well. So we are going to finish up, guys. Again, we do have our information here up on screen. Please do reach out to us if you have particular questions that we can answer or share resources with you. It was really great having you guys today. Excuse me. And let's see. I just want to thank you. I know that Emily left, but thank you to Cory and Nicole. You guys have been great. Thanks for sharing your story. And it's really great to see you. And best of luck in your lockdown in your various locations.
Thanks, Erika. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you all.
Good seeing you guys. Take care. And thanks for tuning in, everyone.